Okay, welcome to this self-check algebra review, and we're going to be going over these self-check problems. Make sure to follow along, double check your work, and submit. Okay, so let's check out the first problem. 5x minus 4 minus 3 times x minus 2. We want to simplify it, right? So first thing I got to do is distribute in this negative 3. Okay, don't forget about the negative, right? It's a negative 3, so I gotta remember to bring that along. And so what I'm left with is 5x minus 4 minus 3x plus 6. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Okay, so combine like terms. I have a 5x and a negative 3x, and that becomes like 5 minus 3, which is 2x. I have a negative 4 and a 6. 6 minus 4 is 2. So 2x plus 2. Okay, so we distributed something and combined like terms, and that's what we get. So let's look at part B now. Part B is we're multiplying two expressions now. We have x plus 2 times 2x minus 1. So we're going to FOIL this, right? So it'll be x times 2x, and that would be 2x squared. We have x times negative 1. That would be negative x, right? You could write negative 1x if you want, or you could just write negative x, whichever works for you. We would have 2 times 2x, and that is 4x, and then 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2. So if we combine like terms again, really the only like terms are negative x and 4x, and that's would be 3x. So I'll get 2x squared plus 3x minus 2. Okay, so let's move on to number 2. So we want to solve the equation. Okay, so we have 5x plus 7 minus or equals 7 minus 3x. Okay, so I want to get x by itself on one side. I have a couple copies of x, but think about it as combining like terms. So what I want to do is add 3x to both sides because I can combine these like terms. So this 3x cancels out. What I'm left with is 8x. 5x plus 3x is 8x plus 7 equals 7. Okay, so I still want to get x by itself. So what I want to do is clear out this 7 here. So minus 7, that cancels out. What I'm left with is 8x equals 0, actually. And I'm still not done yet. I need to get x by itself. So I'm going to divide 8 to both sides. But 0 divided by anything is just going to be 0. So what I'm left with is just x equals 0. And that is how you solve this equation, right? We get our x value. Okay, so feel free to stop the video at any time and see if you need to rewind or play it again. Okay, so number 3, for the function f of x equals 3x squared minus x plus 2, we want to evaluate at the specific input. So remember that 2 is an input, right? I'm going to input 2 into this function. So what this becomes is f of 2, and I'm going to plug in 2 wherever there's an x. So 3 times 2 squared minus 2 plus 2. So here's where that PEMDAS comes in, right? Parentheses, exponents, right? So this would be 3 times 4 minus 2 plus 2. So it'd be 12 minus 2 plus 2. So it would be just 12. Okay, so that is you get an output of 12 when you plug in 2, and f of 2 equals 12. Okay, so let's check out part B now. So same thing, I'm going to plug in -1 wherever there is an x. So it's a little different now with the negatives, or just remember to keep track of them. So -1 squared, that's just 1. -1 times -1, that's just +1, plus 2. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 plus 2, and I get 5. So the input of -1, I get an output of 5. F of -1 is 5. Okay, great. So that is evaluating this function at specific inputs. Now let's talk about x and y intercept. So for a function, f of x equals 5x minus 9, let's find the x and y intercept. So recall, x and y intercept is when y equals 0, right? Remember that. So this f of x is the same thing as y, right? That's our output. So I'm just going to set that equal to 0 and then solve for x. So 0 equals 5x minus 9, right? Because that's when y is 0. So now I just got to solve for x and figure out what that is. So if I add 9 on both sides, I get 5x equals 9, right? And if I divide 5 to both sides, I get 9/5. And that is my x-intercept. So I would get a coordinate point like 9/5, comma 0. Okay, so likewise, a y-intercept is when x equals 0. So now I'm just going to make x equals 0. So I'll get, remember, f of x, y, that's our output. So I'll get y equals 5 times 0 minus 9. And so I'll just get y equals, I'll get y equals 0 minus 9. So y equals -9. So that is my y-intercept. And it'll be a point like 0, comma, -9. Okay, so that's how we find x and y intercepts. You just got to set the other variable equal to 0. And just remember that f of x is your output, meaning that it's y. Okay, so let's get into factoring again. So factor the following quadratic functions to solve for x, right? So I want to factor this x squared minus 2x minus 15, right? So remember, the way I go about it is I want to find two numbers that multiply to 15 and add up to -2. So those two numbers would be -5 and 3. -5 times 3 is -15, and -5 plus 3 is -2. So what this factors into is x minus 5, x plus 3 equals 0. Okay, so now I got to solve for x, but remember what we did in the review? You just set them separately equal to 0 and just solve for x. So x minus 5 equals 0. You add 5 to both sides. You get x equals 5. X plus 3 equals 0. You subtract 3 to both sides, and you get x minus 3. So that's how you would factor this and solve for x. It's really the same question, but it's kind of taken it step by step. Okay, great. So now let's move on to this factoring here. Remember, it's a little different because we have a number in front of the x squared component. So factoring, but it's a little more, a couple more steps. So same thing. I want to find two numbers that multiply to 2 times -6. So -12 up there. And I know it's a negative x, but kind of imagine there's a invisible one right there. So remember the top number, we got to multiply our two numbers here. So it'll be -12. I want to find two numbers that multiply to -12 and add up to -1. Well, that would be -4 and 3. Okay. So what this becomes is 2x squared minus 4x plus 3x minus 6 equals 0. And now we're going to start grouping. So grouping. And so I'm going to factor out what's something these two have in common. Well, they have a 2x in common to factor out. So what I'll get is 2, I'll write a different color. I'll get a 2x. This would be x minus 2 plus what's something these two have in common. That would be a 3. So that would be plus 3, and it would be x minus 2. So these are the same, so that's good. That means you were doing it right. And now I have my factored expression. So 2x plus 3. Remember, the other expression is the things you factored out. And then it would be x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so now we got to solve for x. So it'll be 2x plus 3 equals 0. And x minus 2 equals 0. So right away, this one will just be x equals 2. Just add 2 to both sides. This one, we got to subtract 3 to both sides and then divide it by 2. That is how you solve for this equation here. Okay, so just take some more practice, right? If you need to rewind and go over it again, feel free to. There's also great YouTube videos as well um, that show you how to do this. So last thing, just going to simplify some expressions, right? So this was um, recall that, square root of x, well, that becomes x to the 1/2, right? So it would be x squared over x to the 1/2. And when you're simplifying exponents, you're really just subtracting them like this. And that would just be x to the 3/2. All right, so maybe I could go off to the side and do that. So it would be, it would be 2 minus 1/2. Get like terms like 2 over 2 times that. So it would be 4 over 2 minus 1/2, which is just 3/2. Okay. And if you have a calculator, always, oops, I'm sorry. It's not here. We'll do this. Sorry about that. Just to recap, in case the screen didn't have it, just two simplifying exponents, just 2 minus 1/2, and then that just becomes 3/2. And here's the work right here, just subtracting exponents, right? Okay, so let's check out part B for this last one here. It's really just the same exact question, just flip this time. So what this becomes is x to the 1/2 over x squared, which is just x to the 1/2 minus 2. And it's really just x to the negative 3/2, right? And if we want to make that positive, it's 1 over x to the 3/2. Okay, so that's it. And see you next time. Thank you.